Some Democrats are using Donald Trump to sell their tax hike plan when they get back from summer break. Now, here's what Donald said that got them excited.
The hedge fund people make a lot of money and they pay very little tax. I know people in hedge funds, they pay almost nothing, and it's ridiculous.
Yeah, but some here saying with a crazy market like this, it's crazy to talk about upping taxes on investors, even if they are wealthy. So who's right? Hi, everybody. I'm David Aslan. Welcome to Forbes on Fox. Let's go in focus to find out with Steve Forbes, Mike Gozanian, Elizabeth McDonald, Carrie Sheffield, John Tamny, and Bruce Japsen. John, what do you think about this? The Democrats using a plan by Donald Trump.
It's a really bad idea, and it's no surprise that Donald Trump would promote it. It's certainly true what he says, that hedge funds and other forms of Wall Street finance don't create things. In fact, they do something much more important. They get capital to those who do create things. That's why they're paid so well. That's why we have Apple, we have Amazon, we have Dell Computer. It would be a brutally impoverished world without Wall Street. So the idea that we would penalize those who make a lot of money allocating capital is really hideous.
And Bruce, particularly at this time when the markets are really kind of teetering, you really want to tax investors more right now as the stock market is kind of teetering?
Well, I think there's two things I like about this. Number one, it prevents Trump from disparaging more nationalities and stops him briefly from talking about immigration. And number two is, it is sort of a fairness issue because this is essentially, it's complicated, but essentially they're taxing the carried interest as a gain, and they should be taxing these guys as income. It's a fairness issue.
Well, but Democrats want to double. Democrats, by the way, do have a couple of plans, Steve Forbes, that they're going to implement when they get back from their summer break, one of which would almost double the tax that these kind of investors pay.
Well, that's right, David, and this just gets how you not revive an economy. Look at Greece. They tax everything. It throws it into a depression. The only way you get an economy to grow is by having investment, by getting capital to people who can use it, and those who do it well get rewarded. Those who don't get shoved to the sidelines.
By the way, Emac, on the other side of the Republican thinking on this, Marco Rubio wants to end all taxation on investments. He says that anything you tax, you're going to get less of. We want more investment. Why would we tax it?
Well, Marco Rubio is right. Although hedge fund guys, yeah, they do pay lower taxes. They pay 20%. That's lower than what the income tax that other people pay. But, you know, just ask billionaire minimizer, tax minimizer Warren Buffett, you know, what he thinks about this whole issue. I think the focus is misplaced. It's what Congress is doing with our money. And you know what? You tax the upper brackets, the middle class is next, and then we have Europe in this country.
Well, and you bring up a great point. Who would you rather have that money, investors or the government? Meanwhile, some of these guys that Donald Trump was focusing on and that Democrats want to focus on, Kerry, one of these guys, Anthony Scaramucci, had the following to say about what Donald said. Play the tape.
I don't like the Elizabeth Warren, Barack Obama rhetoric about the hedge fund industry. I'm paying my taxes, 52% marginal rate.
Yeah.
I give a lot of money to charity. We do a lot of work. And so I don't need people telling me that I'm just pushing paper.
Kerry, what do you think about what he said?
I think Scaramucci is absolutely right in this case. I mean, the question is, like Emac said, do we want to be more like Europe or do we want to be like America? Our middle class here, the median family makes $42,000 compared to Europe, the European Union, only $21,000. Do we actually want to make the American middle class poorer? No, no. This is no secret why Donald Trump has given six-figure checks to the Clinton Foundation. He is not a true conservative.
Well, Mike, the fact is that Trump is saying something very similar to what Bruce said, which is that these multimillionaire hedge funders aren't paying taxes. We should remember, though, that 1%, the top 1% of whom are made up of people like this, pay 38% of all the income tax, the federal income tax that comes in.
Well, Bruce is absolutely right when it comes to the incentive tax that hedge fund and private equity managers pay. That portion should be taxed as ordinary income because it doesn't involve risk capital. But to your point, David, you're right. The numbers do even get more onerous. When you look at the top 20% of the earners, they pay 80% of all income taxes. And to that, I would like to see the presidential candidates talk about lowering ordinary income rates rather than raising the rates for capital investment.
And, John, to Marco Rubio's point, we need more investment. We don't want to tax it, meaning we get less of it, right?
Yeah, it's fairly simple. Bruce brought up fairness. Well, what is fair about there being less investment? Because there quite simply are no companies and no jobs without investment first. And so when we tax those with capital, we reduce the amount of companies that are creating those jobs. Why is it that just because someone's rich, just because someone's skillful at allocating capital, that they owe more money to the government than others do?
Well, let me throw it to Bruce. Is there something wrong with being rich, Bruce?
No, not at all. I mean, everybody wants, wants to make money and for their family and provide for their family. I think what Trump is doing here.
Hold on a second. Hold on. We're talking about more than providing for their family. Is there anything wrong with being filthy rich? Doesn't everybody want to be rich? Poor people buy these scratch-off lottery tickets hoping they'll get rich.
Well, and they'll probably pay a higher tax rate than some of these hedge fund guys if they on their lottery ticket. That's the point.
But should people be penalized for being rich? Because it seems like that's what you're saying.
No, it's not what I'm saying. I think what this is a conversation starter, and I think what we're doing is better than what the Republicans are doing by talking about these crazy social issues in immigration. I think Trump is getting people going and talking about eventually reforming the tax code, because he also, in some of these same stories, he talked about Steve Forbes' idea of a flat tax. So I think it's a conversation starter.
Steve, this is a problem I have with Trump. On the one hand, he makes the great point that everybody wants to be rich. The poor want to be rich. The middle class want to be rich, and there's nothing wrong with it. This is a country where you can become rich. But at the same time, he gets into this fairness stuff that Bruce was talking about, where it seems that you should be penalized because you're rich. There's something wrong with it somehow.
Well, in the next 30 days, the campaign and the candidate are coming out with a tax plan. We'll see what actually they put on the table instead of these musings you get on the campaign trail. As for higher taxes, all higher taxes, we should just say, you're fired. Not going to be done.
Yeah, right. Well,
Gary, go ahead.
That's great. And this, like I said, this is not about being rich per se. It's about the middle class. The American middle class, $42,000 versus $27,000 for the Europeans. Our middle class is rich in Europe.
Well,
so it's just destroying the incentive
it's also
structure.
that the tax code, the U.S. tax code, really is codified envy. And if raising taxes was the answer, we'd already be in the promised land. Does Harry Reid and Nancy Pelosi know better what to do with our money than what we know better to do what to do with our money? I mean, they've blown. We're in what, $19 trillion now in the federal deficit.
And Mike, that's why I wish the Trump message would stay focused on that and that alone. The fact, who would you rather have this money? These hotshot investors, many of whom are filthy rich, but God bless them for being filthy rich, or the government.
I don't think Trump's saying that at all. At least that's not what I got out of what he said in that speech. What he's saying is capital gains should be treated as capital gains and ordinary income taxed as ordinary income. And what they're doing for these hedge fund managers, they're taxing ordinary income at the lower capital gains rate. And that's not fair.
Isn't we don't want to get too much. Hold on. Steve, we don't want to get too much into the details of this, but when you invest money, you're always risking money, right? So there's always, you could always lose it.
That's right. It's not the same as a salary. You don't know whether you're going to get a return, which, by the way, all goes to, we need a flat tax. Get rid of all this junk.
All right. And Steve, final word. Nothing wrong with being rich, is there?
No, and they're not filthy. They take showers each day.
All right. Last word from Steve. Coming up next, Hillary Clinton's new plan to get America's economy back up. Double down on green energy. But haven't we tried that already?